What's up, James? Just wanted to dialogue a bit about the video you sent. So, a few things I was thinking. One is there's a bunch of things I agree with as a Protestant. So, I think that they're like thinking about Roman Catholic theology. And so, for example, yeah, they talk about the papacy. I agree. I don't think that there's any evidence for the office of a pope, or certainly, it doesn't even come into existence until like around the year 900, so very late in the development of Christianity. Of course, Roman Catholics try to read it back into the early church, but it is not there on evidence. And so, yeah, I agree with those things. I think that they try to uh, repudiate the idea of original sin, which is a doctrine that is taught by Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Anglican, Lutheran, Presbyterian, everybody, the whole sort of household of the Christian faith. They try to make it a Pauline thing, which I thought was strange. So you can read in, like, for example, Psalm 51, it says, "In sin was I conceived," which really is the idea of original sin, that we are, since the fall, born sinners, that we're not, we don't sin, we're not sinners because we sin. We sin because we are sinners, that there's something that has gone fundamentally wrong since sin entered the world with us, that we're created good, first of all. We're created good by God. So our essential nature as humans is good, but there is this twisting and corruption that comes to every person, and we carry it with us even into the world as we are, even before we are born. Again, you can read that in Psalm 51. That's just one very well-known example, but that doctrine is everywhere. It's not just a Pauline thing. So that I thought was kind of strange. And then, yeah, it seems to me that what he might be trying to do is sort of like see past the Bible. And I think that anyone who's sort of like, let me try to read past the Bible, um, I think what you wind up doing is throwing out anyone who's sort of trying to be like, let me get to the real Jesus beyond the Bible, past the documents that we have. What they would usually wind up doing is just throwing out our best sources, really, of who Jesus is in the scriptures. And so for example, I find the best ways to uh, sort of criticize Roman Catholic theology is to appeal to the Bible, right? The Bible itself tells us, we can see in the book of Acts, for example, how the early church conducted itself. And there was not, Peter was not infallible. You can read that in a few places. Galatians, Paul says that he rebuked Peter to his face. So this is Paul. Peter is like an inside guy with Jesus, but Paul feels quite free when Peter is in error to rebuke him to his face. There's no idea that Peter's like the supreme guy, right? Even Acts 15, the Jerusalem Council, we see Peter stand up and speak, but others stand up and speak, and there's a consensus reached. And it's not exactly what Peter said. So we don't, you know what I mean? So you can actually like disprove some of these false teachings by actually appealing to the Bible. And I think that when you sort of throw out the Bible, or you sort of go, it's all crazy, you're kind of just grasping at straws at that point. Historically, there's nothing left for you to appeal to and say like, well, this is real Jesus. There's no historical source left because the best ones by far we have are in the Bible. So I think that if our interest is to seek Jesus, if we see Jesus as Lord, Savior, God, He who will speak and we will learn, that's the way. Otherwise, we're kind of left going like, well, Jesus was a good guy. He's kind of on the way to being as good as me in a way. Like we sort of like tussle Jesus's hair and try to sort of say like, yeah, you're pretty good. You're almost as good as sort of what I believe, which is like, of course, now we're not really learning from Jesus. Jesus is sort of just like a pawn, sort of like a religiously important pawn in a game that we're playing, versus what I would recommend is just falling at his feet. And that's what people do, right? They worship him. He receives their worship. And so I just think there's a different posture to be had than what these guys are striking, which is kind of like, again, trying to see past the best, most reliable sources we have in Jesus to find the real Jesus. But of course, it's always just a Jesus that we make for ourselves rather than coming to someone outside of ourselves. And so, I'm only 10 minutes in. That's kind of what I'm seeing so far. Some familiar things. I've never seen quite this like exact bag of ideas all together like that, but those are just some of my thoughts. And yeah, I'll see if I can sort of find time to watch a little bit more at some point. But appreciate you sending that my way, and love to keep on chatting. See you, man.